Many are coming. They don't even call them bases. They call them something like expeditionary locations, exactly what they call them in Iraq.
The military accord would allow the U.S. to reach by air and sea across Colombia to the Pacific and to the Caribbean. Colombia's Foreign Minister JAIME Bermudez insisted the objective was not to help American imperialism.
Ha habido comentarios que sin duda.
There have been some comments that definitely go too far and challenge Colombia's sovereign decisions. It is up to Colombia and the United States to make the right decisions that will enable us to end drug trafficking and terrorism. This action will benefit Colombia and the entire region, and it would help other countries to have these kind of agreements in place.
Latin Americans have always been sensitive about American interference, but ahead of this meeting, President Barack Obama has sent an envoy to Buenos Aires as a goodwill gesture and to explain his position. But tensions are still likely. Colombia has asked for this meeting to be televised, perhaps to avoid a Venezuelan outburst. Sparks may still fly. Candice Piet, BBC News, Bariloche, Argentina.
Well, let's get more analysis on that summit now. Joining me from Washington is Michael Shifter, Vice President for Policy at the Inter-American Dialogue think tank. Michael Shifter, do you think Colombia is going to be able to assuage these concerns?
Well, I think clearly all the governments are uneasy, and I think Colombia alone won't be able to do it, but I think it may get some help from more moderate governments like Brazil especially. UNASUR is the initiative of Brazil, and I'm not sure that Brazil, as the regional power, want things to get out of hand here. So I think they may get some support from Brazil once Colombia makes the guarantee very explicit that none of these bases will be used for operations outside of Colombian borders.
And I suppose they're never going to be able to win over people like Hugo Chavez, are they?
I think that's pretty much of a lost cause. I think Chavez will get as much mileage out of this as he can. I think we should expect very aggressive rhetoric. But I think President Lula of Brazil may come in to calm things down.
I suppose the Americans in some ways, though, haven't made it easy for themselves. I noted that a Pentagon document, a U.S. military document, described one of the Colombian bases, Palanquero, as a potential jumping-off point for the whole continent, noting that nearly half the continent can be covered by a C-17 military transport plane without refueling. I suppose that's bound to raise some concerns in the minds of Colombia's neighbors.
Well, I don't think this has been managed very well in Washington. I think what's happened, the fundamental problem is that the Pentagon and the Southcom, the military, has kind of driven this whole policy, and there's really been a lack of high-level political attention on the part of the Obama administration, and I think it's been very costly. I'm not sure there's any great plan afoot in South America. I seriously doubt it, but this was not handled very well.
That's the point, isn't it? I mean, their role there is pretty limited out of these Colombian bases.
Absolutely. I think, you know, you look at the United States is not really looking at Latin America in a very strategic way. It's been operating over the last decade. There really is no evidence at all that there's any great plan here on the part of the United States. But we know that whenever U.S. military resources are involved, it arouses suspicions, and we know that Hugo Chavez is going to jump on it. And this was not the groundwork was not laid beforehand, and that's really why we're having so many problems.
Sounds as though the United States has got an awful lot of diplomatic ground to make up.
Absolutely.
All right, Michael Shifter, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You're with World News Today.